is there a book in the plate?
Yeah. There is, but God knows when it'll actually get finished. I've been kind of writing a book on and off for maybe 8 years now. And, that came about because so many people, especially with the rock and roll, being on the road, as I said, with some of the people I toured with, you need to write a book. Because, I used to have adjoining rooms to these artists. I knew everything they did, everything they got up to. And I knew that the attraction for certain people for me to write a book is to write about all the shit that went on. And I always swore I'd never do that. I was in such a confidential position by knowing everything. They befriended me, and I feel that would be an incredible betrayal. And I hate those kiss and tell books, once you stop working for somebody. And so I said, no, I would never do that. And then I thought about it and thought, what could be interesting is to write a book about lessons I have learned and had learned from what I call people at the top of their game. And like a Mick Jagger or a Jackie Chan, or a Chuck Norris or a David Bowie. I mean, the longevity of the careers of people like that and others that I've worked with, I thought it was very interesting to have the opportunity to be around them for the years that I was, and to look back and realize how many things I learned from their behavior, and things that I could construe help give them the careers they had. But I guess what I'm also saying is also that's what the general public sees, is that stage persona, for instance, or that screen persona of an actor or a rock and roll singer or artist or musician. But what I was lucky enough to see is the person. And as I said, I absolutely realized that the one thing they had in common was their passion. A lot of the lessons that I looked at these artists, I realized that I kind of picked up in that moment of talking to them. It might be just something they said. And sometimes I realized it was years later that I said, oh, wow, I remember when so-and-so said that. So it's a lesson I learned years later. Hence, the name that I wanted for my book was In the Moment with Hindsight. Meaning, and the idea of the book was to try and make people a little more aware of the lessons that are possible by those around them and given by those around them, and be open to learning that lesson then and there, whether it be a good lesson or a bad lesson, and hopefully then affect their own lives for the better. And I always say to people too, it's not the 2 hours on the mat that's important as far as behavior. It's the 22 hours off the mat. I mean, you really, I believe, should be a martial artist 24 hours a day, not just that 2 hours when you put a uniform on and you tie your belt and you punch around and role play, which so many of us do. It's how am I with everybody else that I interact in, with the people around me, society in general. It's all very well, as I said, to appear like the Dalai Lama on the mat and then to be a complete dick, off the mat for the other 22 hours in your private life or out in public. That's the big lesson for me. It's interesting, I'll finish off with another chapter in the book. To illustrate that, there was a gentleman named David Sanborn, who was a session musician, they called him, work on lots of albums, and he toured with James and Linda, and he was probably one of the best saxophonists, in the world. Mini saxophone he used to play. And David had polio, and when he used to play, his hand looked almost, he used to have a strap that people didn't even know to hold his hand up, that he could, press the different keys and everything. And he took up saxophone due to a doctor saying he needed to develop his lungs and everything else, and he became one of the best in the world. Anyway, cut long story short, he's one of the best in the world. So again, back to that through line of people at the top of their game. And I was watching David in a session, rehearsal, and I was sort of up in the bleachers just listening, and it struck me that the way he was playing was so different to something that I could remember hearing other people play. And we're in the tour bus, kind of long story, a bit shorter, and I said to David, David, it really intrigued me. Your notes aren't like I'm normally used to hearing. They're almost like abstract, you know. And again, cutting a long story short, which one of my favorite sort of moments, you know, that I learned is he basically said to me, he said, well, I don't make sounds. I merely punctuate the quiet. He said, in my mind, I'm never not playing. I've always playing in my head. When you hear the noises, when I choose to externalize that sound, so you hear it and you go, oh, he's playing the saxophone, if I'm making sense. So he's a musician 24 hours a day. He's never not playing in his head. It's just, again, when you choose to externalize his art that you become aware of it. So on the same, choosing same analogy as a martial artist, you walk on the mat. For a lot of people, when you put a belt on, you put your gi on, your hakama or whatever, people go, oh, he's a martial artist. Or you throw that first punch. They go, oh, he's doing karate or he's doing boxing. But ideally, you should never not be a martial artist. All you've done in that stage is choose to externalize your art that others can appreciate what you're doing and be aware of what you're doing. But your mindset and your being is really, it should be that, again, you're never not a martial artist with the spirit and the integrity and the code of honor that goes with being that.
Sometimes when you hear something or you discover something, you're not often aware what you discovered till you come across later again.
Hence, in hindsight.
In hindsight.
And sometimes you are aware. Like I was aware right then and there of that, what he was saying. And I immediately, you know, went, wow. You know, that's it. You know, we're martial artists 24 hours a day. He's a musician 24 hours a day. Art is about that, you know. An artist, you know, we're all artists. It's just that we externalize our art in different ways.
Any last advice for mindfulness?
Again, just be in the moment more than not. You know, listen, everybody needs to set goals. You know, just the big lesson, you know, I love Eckhart Tolle, you know, who has a book. You know, it's all about being in the moment and it's all about striking a balance. You know, we all need goals. We all need to sort of see things in the future and set goals and aspirations, but also allow yourself to just be aware of what is happening right now and enjoy that, you know, because as he would say, that's the only thing that's real anyway. Next week, next year, what you think you're going to achieve, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. Maybe you'll get hit by a bus tomorrow. So, you know, I used to say that people, you could walk down a beach and have the most beautiful sunset. And so many people will not even be aware of it because they're so in their heads about tomorrow's work, the rent, the fight they just had with their wife or their girlfriend or anything, and they miss this glorious sunset, and it's free. It's right there, and it's there just to enrich one's spirit and one's soul, you know, and that's I think, the big thing about being in the moment, whatever it might be, just be a little more in than not.
Perfect. We'll finish on that. Thank you, Richard.
All right, pleasure.